Okay, there we go. Yes, Ayesha, we're ready to go.
Okay. Hello, hi everyone to another session of Inspiring Indian Women. Today we are talking about the hot topic and how to adjust with it. We have got Sonal Dave with us today. She's the award-winning Celebrant Toastmaster, public speaking expert, even a magistrate. But most important is long COVID survivor. Amazing, Sonal. And we also have Dr. AJAI KUMAR, who is a consultant psychiatrist in London. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. AJAI. I know between both of you, we will have a great conversation. To talk to the other people, please feel free to comment or ask any questions after. And I'm going to pass the stage now to Sonal. All yours, Sonal.
Thank you so much. And Rashmi and the whole team of IIW, thank you for having me here today. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And I thought I'd start by just giving you a little bit of background of where it all started in the topic of long COVID. So back last March, April, I felt quite ill in that I was struggling to breathe. I was having chest palpitations, and I just knew something was wrong. So I called 111. And whilst I was on the call, like literally during that call, the ambulance arrived, and they took me to hospital by ambulance, unfortunately on my own. So you have to imagine the scenario. My husband is at home, my two dogs are home, and it's just me in an ambulance being hooked up to various things, not really understanding what was going on. We
When
got
was
to the
it,
hospital.
Sonal?
So this was March, April last year. So in 2020, early part of when COVID was
Gosh.
being talked about. So
Okay.
at hospital, they treated me with the nebulizer for asthma, and they did the ECG, and they said I was having an asthma attack, and my T marker, I think they call it, was slightly elevated. But then they said we'd like to keep you in overnight. So I thought, actually, no, I'd like to go home. My husband's home. It's just me and my husband, and I went home. But I never felt right. I was ill, I was in bed, I was struggling. And I'm one of these people that from birth I've had challenges, being born with a disability, but this was different. I felt different, head to toe. Something was going on and I couldn't understand. And literally, I think it was 6 or 8 weeks later, I was back in hospital. Again, they did lots of tests and things, and they told me I had something called post viral myalgia, which means you've had a virus, some sort of virus, and now you're dealing with the aftermath and the pain and everything that goes with it. So I asked the obvious question, consultant, have I had COVID? And they said yes. And I was shocked because the 6 weeks before, when I was in hospital, it hadn't been mentioned. But that was right at the beginning of COVID times and talking about it, where a lot of, I suppose, the testing wasn't as the norm as it is as the months went on and as it is now. And then came back home after that visit to hospital, and then I just never felt right. And I went to my GP a couple of months later, and I said to my GP, something's going on, I don't know what it is. Now, I think I was extremely fortunate, having heard a lot of stories of people who've been to their GP asking for help. My GP immediately sent off for blood tests, sent for a chest scan. All these tests were done like pretty quickly. And next thing I knew, I was at Royal Brompton Hospital for a whole day, having lung function tests, body scans, blood tests, allergy tests, everything. And what seems to have happened through the journey of long COVID is one of my lungs became weak. So I was inhaling fine, but when I was exhaling, one of my lungs was not exhaling fully. And then this trapped stagnant air was what was starting to affect my breathing even more so than the asthma. So it was kind of twofold was affecting. and it developed a dry cough. So the dry cough started irritating the trachea and your voice box. So what happened was suddenly I started to lose my voice. Now everything I do is speaking, singing, talking, teaching, and I was like, when I say losing my voice, it was literally with my husband. I was typing on the phone to say, "Would you chai choy? Can I have some toast?" You know, anything that, because I just couldn't talk. And then next thing I found myself with a speech therapist, and I was like, "Whoa, this is serious." I've got a speech therapist, I've got a physio for breathing, I'm being told my lungs are weak, my voice, the fatigue. Honestly, guys, if I tell you the fatigue, the tiredness, like there were days where, like, just to turn over in bed to try and get up was just exhausting. So, what would I do? If I'm really honest, I would stay in bed. I would stay in bed, which totally counteracts what my heart, mind, and soul and brain and everything is telling me, because I'm a keep going, you know, you'll be fine, you'll be all right. But it wasn't all right. It wasn't. And in fact, um, those that knew suddenly would, you know, dropping food parcels on the doorsteps, telling my husband they'll pick up my medication, because my husband became my carer for a few months. He was literally my carer, having to make sure I was, you know, able to get out of bed, shower, all those kind of things. And when you've gone from being, you know, you start life with a disability and you have your challenges through life and you become independent. You become independent, you're a survivor, and suddenly this knocked me, but to the point where I didn't know how to survive. I kind of felt, I could feel like mentally I was starting to struggle. I could feel that, you know, I wasn't able to give as much as I was always giving in the past. And that thought process is quite hard to deal with when um, you're independent and you're out there. And Rashmi, you'll know this as well. And Aisha, as we've spoken, you know, a lot of people were looking at me like, you know, Sonal does this and Sonal does that, and Sonal helps children and adults. And suddenly I didn't know how to help myself. And that was I think the hardest lesson of all was I didn't know how to help myself. And it was only through talking with lots of people and my various therapists that I learnt the hard way that to help myself, I had to look at myself and what I was doing. And the answer was my body needed to rest. And I think that's probably a good point to bring in Ajay, because I think Ajay's background and what he does will probably not only help me in some of what I'm going through, but also others that are watching and listening as well.
Yes, absolutely. It's amazing, Sona. Like, so are you still having the effects of it? Is that right?
Yes, I am still,
Yeah,
and I'm on
yeah.
various medication and have various therapists. Yeah.
Yes. So, Dr. Ajay, like, it's a very good point to talk about because, you know, even from my point of view, it's mentally affected lots of people. I can just see people are just so apprehensive. People have had it are apprehensive. People who are just scared sitting, they're just scared of going out. I mean, what is this? And is this the future? What will happen?
Thank you, Aisha, and thank you, Sonal, for such an inspiring and amazing story that you shared with us about your experiences. Um, in the early parts of this year, we had many patients like you referred to my service. I manage a crisis team in
I think
Northwest.
Ajay, sir, you need to, you know, go a little louder.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try this now. Is it any better?
Yes.
Okay. So in the early part of this year, we had a number of patients referred to my crisis team. So I run a mental health crisis team in one of the Northwest London boroughs. And these were patients referred to us who had recovered from COVID, but were now their GPs were suspecting that they had developed depression because of all the trauma that they had had. And and very quickly we realized that actually what they were experiencing was not depression. And at that time, this whole idea of long COVID hadn't really been identified yet. So we had to work closely with their GPs and with them sometimes to sort of reorient their way of thinking about what was going on to them, going on with them. Because when like you were saying, Sonal, when you that realization that happens when you realize that actually you need rest, and this is not you just feeling lazy or not feeling motivated. It's a very physical thing that's gone wrong with your body, and it's not something that you can will yourself out of. So um, that was in the beginning of this year and late last year. Thankfully, those referrals have stopped coming to us. What we have noticed also is that COVID has led to a massive spike in all sorts of mental health problems across the population. Um, and some of these things you referred to, Aisha, an increase in anxiety about um, the uncertainties of catching that illness and your loved ones catching it. But there's also concerns and anxieties about people's livelihoods and the security, their financial job security, those sort of things. And quite interestingly, one of the things that we noticed was that that COVID forced people to spend more time with themselves. They couldn't go out and see their friends. They couldn't go to work, um, uh, and that was quite a challenge for a lot of people. We are not used to spending too much time with ourselves. We are designed to keep ourselves busy, and we can spend hours watching Netflix just to avoid having to spend time with our own thoughts. And all those measures were exhausted in this pandemic. How much Netflix can you watch? How much TV can you watch? How much music you can listen to? How much you can talk on the phone? People were forced to spend time with themselves, and a lot of people had nervous breakdowns just because of this time that they had to spend with their own thoughts, with their own the flow of thoughts that happens, that brings again and again your past experiences, your future worries, your concerns and anxieties in your mind. A lot of people turn to alcohol and drugs to cope with that. So we had both sort of problems, people having nervous breakdowns and people coming to us with massive addictions that developed over this period of time. So with those challenges, it was we are still dealing with it. The COVID itself it looks like, at least in England, on its way out. In most countries where vaccination programs have progressed well, that is what it looks like. But for large parts of the world, it is still a major challenge, and people still have to continue with the isolation. And there is still uncertainty about how this will all pan out, because we don't know how this virus will mutate and how long these vaccines we have made, how long they will remain effective. So those are uncertainties are there, and as a society, we do need to start thinking about how are we going to prepare ourselves for any future lockdowns? How are we going to develop our own abilities to be with ourselves without resorting to using drugs and alcohol, and without spending all our waking hours on Netflix? So that's something that we can talk about a bit later on. But for now, what I just want to ask Sonal was, you mentioned something that really very impressed me, that you had that transition in your thinking when you realized that you had to take a step back and give yourself some time. And what were you going through at that point, and how did you make that transition, and how did you sort of arrive at a new understanding of what was going on with you?
Thank you, Ajay. And that's a really, really good question as well, because when I was initially going through my COVID and long COVID stages, I was also trying to look after my couples in my wedding industry, my events industry, and clients, because they were all having to postpone events. So because they were trying to having to, no choice, having to postpone events, I was kind of fixated in that world. So I was continuing. It was online, but I was continuing. And then I had clients that I had one-to-one clients with my public speaking work, and I was trying to do that as well. And it was one of after a conversation with one of the couples. In fact, I finished the Zoom call with them. We left all very happy, and I kind of left the office room and I went to the lounge, and I looked at my husband and I just broke down in tears, because I said to him, I can't do this anymore. Every day I'm getting up and you're helping me to shower so that I can look good on Zoom. What is this about? I must look good on Zoom. Well, what's that doing to me? And and we really had a heart to heart. And many of you who might be on the Zoom or on Facebook may have noticed that I wasn't visible on social media. I had a virtual assistant who was doing posts for me, but you didn't physically see me on, hey guys, how are you today? This is what I'm up to this week. There was none of that, and there hasn't been for months. And the reason for that was I went into what I would call self-care mode. And self-care mode meant I was allowing myself to wake up when my body was ready to wake up. The rushing around in the morning turned into little bits of stretching exercises in bed before I actually then got up and got out of bed. Everything became slower. It became more thought about. Even simple things, Ajay, like eating, making sure that I was having breakfast, not rushing to my first Zoom call. I've got a Zoom call.
Yeah.
I've got a Zoom call to get breakfast. No, I was going to have my breakfast. And I sent out a
And
message.
then, I mean, as I say, it would be nice to see them, but again, it's everybody's got plans and everybody's got.
And thank you. And it was very interesting to see how I was reacting to that, because there's the physical reaction in that you start behaving differently, but there's still your mind saying, no, but you could do this, and you can do. It was like a little fight was going on in my mind. Rest, no, do this, do this, do this. And how do you calm that side of your mind down to say it's so for example, I would like do a few emails, maybe have one Zoom call, in the morning at about 11, so at my time when I was ready, and then I would lie on the sofa at 2 o'clock and have, just lie down and listen to some, instrumental soothing music for 40 minutes. Oh gosh, in the beginning it was like I felt like I was having a heart attack, because I don't rest in the afternoon. We're not taught to allow our body to have a little bit of aram, are we? We're taught to just like keep going. So it was that change of self-care was it was a bit like a roller coaster at the beginning. It was happening, all was good, and then it was like I dipped again and started wanting to do everything, and then I was like getting back and being better at it. I'm going to be honest and say I'm still probably not 100% good at it, but I'm aware of it. I'm definitely aware of it, but it's not easy at all.
Thank you. That's an amazing description. It leads very nicely into something I really wanted to share with everyone. What you described was that internal struggle between different parts of your mind, right? So there's a part of your mind that sort of sits in judgment, tells you that you got to do this, and that's what a good person does. That's what a good girl would do. You have to make sure you ticked all your boxes and got up on time and sorted the house, and if you're not doing everything that that voice inside was telling you to do to be a good person, then you were left feeling quite miserable and disappointed with yourself and sad and angry and frustrated, right? And then what you did was you brought in a part of you that was logical and thinking, right? You use the word thinking to describe it, which is quite insightful, actually. So what you were using there was a model of mind that was initially well, it could be understood by using a model of mind that was initially developed by Freud and later evolved further by Jung and Eric Berne. The model is called the transactional analysis model, and where we look at, or rather try to understand our mind as being made up of different elements, different parts. These are somewhat arbitrary in their, I mean, there are no very, very firm boundaries between these parts, but Ayesha, are you trying to say something? Okay. So, so we'll just quickly try to explain it to you. So there is a part of us which is quite childlike. So the child in us, which is made up of our emotions, our wants, and our needs, is very sensitive. It's the part that wants to go out and play and have a laugh with friends, and it's a part that feels disappointed and sad when we are not able to do things that we feel we should be doing. It's the part that feels angry. It's the part that loves and cares. It's the feeling, wanting part of us. So a way to call it, to label it, is the child inside us. Freud called it the id, but Jung and Berne were more sensible and gave it a name that all of us could understand. So that's the child inside us. Then that voice that is always sort of punitive, passing judgment, right? That voice of conscience. It is actually, if you think about it, the sum of every parental voice you have had in your life. So it's made up of your parents and everyone you looked up to. Because you looked up to them, then you are very sensitive to what they think and say about you, right? And you have amalgamated all these things, and that's the internal voice that passes judgment on all your thoughts and actions. And we call this your parent. So you carry your parent in you. This is the voice of conscience. This is the voice that passes judgment on all your actions. It rewards you when you do something good and allows you to feel happy. And if you do something that you shouldn't be doing, then it passes it can become very critical and leave you feeling very disheartened and disappointed and feeling guilty and embarrassed and ashamed, right? In the middle of these two parts, the child and the parent, is our logical thinking mind, which is us, which is the adult in us. And that part is what you used to make peace between this voice that was telling you, you must do everything, and this feeling inside that said, no, I can't. My body is not able to. So you strengthened your thinking logical voice, your adult, and you brought it out and you made peace between these two, and you found a way where, yes, you are giving in a bit to this voice that tells you to do all the things, but you're also giving the child inside you that voice, the care it needs. So why I wanted to talk about this model was that when you have to spend a lot of time with yourself, either when you are forced to, like you were, Sonal, by the circumstances or of your health, or because of the restrictions of the pandemic, or for any other reason, then you need to have some way of making sense of what's going on inside. And this is just one of the many ways you can go about it, right? By no means is this any better or worse than any other way. It's just one way. But our mind is, if you think about it, is like a complex knot, like one of those strings that get really knotted up. And if you try to straighten it, untangle it by just randomly pulling here and there, it doesn't work. It just ends up in a bigger jumble. Or you might open up a little part, but you find that you have come to another knot now that you cannot untie. So what you need to do is to find one end somewhere. And then from that end, you can slowly start unraveling it. And if you keep working at it patiently from just one simple end, it will eventually lead to a point where things start unraveling more quickly and more easily. So having some way of allowing us to think about ourselves is that knot, that end of that knot, that can lead to a better understanding of ourselves. And as was your experience, so that when we start doing that, when we start giving ourselves time and thinking space about what's going on inside, it can lead to a more better adjusted and harmonious sort of life and relationships. So it's very important to do that, and it's just one of the ways to start doing it. What do you think about that, Sonal? And Ayesha, if you want to pitch in as well.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask you, like, it's very good. That's the way you explain the parent and the child thing. But and the Netflix thing. I try to keep myself very busy watching Netflix, but I can't always watch it because I've got a 9-year-old. I have to look for his studying also. And I tried doing online stuff too, but I really struggled with the self. So how do you, when you say you find a middle, how do we do that? How do we cope with ourselves? I sometimes think I'm the hardest person, to carry around. I also say that I sometimes can't afford myself mentally or physically, you know. So how should we be doing it? What are the ways? That is a mantra, right?
Yes, you have hit the nail on the head. That's what I've been trying to bring out, and you have really, yeah. Sonal did it. Sonal, tell us how you did that.
I actually went through quite what I would call a logical way, as in I after I'd had that conversation with my husband, I sat down with a piece of paper and I actually wrote down what have I done the last few days. And when I looked at it, there was a lot of guttural in there, scrolling social media, scrolling the TV, a conversation with a friend that I really shouldn't have had because I knew it was hurting my throat. And what I started to, when I started to take out the things that were nice to do, but not important, I suddenly started to realize that the important things were having the rest, making sure that I was hydrated, making sure that I was eating good food, and it was listening to me. One of the biggest things I learned was listening to me. And by that, I mean listening to my body. So if my body was starting to go, oh, I'm feeling a bit tired. And your body does give you signs to say you're starting to feel a bit tired. Or do you know what? It's okay. I'm going to go and just, lie on the sofa for 10, 15 minutes, whatever's required. And I'm just going to allow my body to rest. And it was almost, it's really difficult, but it was almost like I was looking inwards. I was looking inwards at my body, and my body was saying to me, I'm tired, Sonal. I'm thirsty. My throat would go dry like sandpaper, and my voice would start. You'll hear it as we talk more. My voice will start sounding like sandpaper. So I'm being good, and I've got my Ribena with me. So it was. And what one of the biggest things that I found that helped me, which I was not expecting at all, was when I spoke to my father. My dad is 78 now. And I spoke to my dad about what is going on. He lives on his own. We lost mum in 2012. But he's 78. He lives on his own, cooks for himself, looks after the house, does his own beds. And I hope you do all this, Ajay. He goes for 3 walks a day, does his own shopping. And I said, Papa, this is what's happening to me. And my dad said to me, Sonal, if you need to rest, rest. Don't feel guilty about it. Now, this is my dad, 78, from that generation. He could hear it in his daughter's voice that she was struggling. He could see it when we did a video call that his daughter was struggling. And so one of the other important things that I've sort of learned through this journey was to share how I'm feeling with those that, that are close to me, those that I love and those that love me. Because in the past, I would just continue and not tell them that I wasn't feeling well. I would just, let's just keep going. Yeah. And then, just sort of collapse at home afterwards. And Ajay, another thing that happened to me, and this, I cannot tell you how or when it just happened, it creeped up on me. I learned to say no. I was such a yes person. Yes, of course I can help you. Yes, of course I can do that. Yes, I'll be there. Just wait. I'll be there in 2 minutes. But suddenly I was actually saying, can can we not do it now and I'll come back to you when I'm ready? Or actually, I can't, but here's a few numbers of people that might be able to help you. Really weird way of thinking and doing, that Ajay, Ayesha, it was such a weird feeling, like, who is this woman? What alien has taken over this woman? But it just means I get to do my self-care, and I'm getting my life back. And I don't mean that in a negative way, and that everything I've done has been horrible and bad and nobody should ask me for anything. But it just meant I felt like I was starting to take back control.
Yeah, yep. I've made notes. I mean, very good points you have put about writing down. Agree. That was brilliant. Writing down what have you done in the past, what is making you unwell, and secondly, the parents thing about your dad. I run an elderly charity, and I can't tell you how much strength it gives me to see the ladies living on their own. And I'm thinking, I can't cope. I'm younger, and they're doing so well. And of course, that sharing thing which you spoke about. And no, I understand that totally. Always trying to help everybody. I was one of the COVID volunteers for the Indian Embassy, just trying to help everyone, taking so much out of myself. So very good, Sonal. I mean, you have done amazingly well. So very helpful. Dr. Ajay, to you, what about the patients you have seen? What happened in your world then?
It's yeah. Before going there, Aisha, I just want to unpack what Sonal has described in a way that might make it a bit more easy to access for everyone. So
Yeah.
what Sonal did there was she described sort of looking at her own routines and experiences from a third-person perspective there, as if she was a therapist coming to visit someone who was having these problems. So if you had asked for a therapist to come and see you, they would have asked you exactly the same things, to make a list of what you're doing, to have a think about pros and cons of each of these actions, right? And that is the part of us that is the adult, right? The thinking part, the logical part. And making a list is just one way of doing it. But to be able to do it, you have to have a degree of self-awareness. You have to train your mind to look at itself. You have to train yourself to look at your life in a slightly removed way. It takes a few weeks of practice to start doing it. And that's what Sonal is also describing, that it took her a few weeks of trying to think about what's going on before she actually figured it out, and amazingly figured it out all by herself. And probably her previous experiences of dealing with difficult challenges helped her with that. But that's the process of it. And then if you think about it, she quite literally took permission from her parent to ease off herself, right? So you wouldn't be able to ask your parent to give permission every time. But you have to realize that this voice inside you that's driving you to do these things and that's so critical of yourself, that is a voice that is a relic of your past, right? It's a relic of your past. It's a sum of your past experiences. It's not your current reality. And if you train your mind to look at itself, if you train to look at yourself a bit more objectively, you can then gather what the therapists call ego strength, or the strength and conviction in your own entitlement to be happy, entitlement to take a step off the pedal. Yeah, you allow yourself to have that entitlement, to be cared for, to be valued. Then you can challenge that voice and say, no, that's fine. I know I should be doing all these things, but at this point I need a break from it. And you can give some nurturing to the parts of you that need some nurturing. We hide from our thoughts. We hide, and Ayesha, a lot of people that have come to me more recently due to pandemic related challenges have been people who struggle with that that sort of situation where the added stress of just being with the thoughts all the time made everything else a bit harder to deal with. So I have had a long-term interest in meditation, probably partly to do with where I come from, and that process helps you develop some of these skills. But that's not the only process. What Sonal described by practical steps of making lists and taking a step back also helps. But meditation helps too, and it's very easy to do. And I think all of us should have half an hour to 40 minutes, maybe an hour of time in our day, every day, where we just take time out and give that time to ourselves. And the idea is to do nothing. The idea is to just stop everything. Stop watching Netflix, stop sending emails, stop browsing social media, stop listening to music, just sit quietly, just by yourself. And that will then, what Sonal's experience was, then it'll allow your body and your heart to speak to you. And it may not be nice things. It may be painful things, like what Sonal discovered, what she describing there, that, I can't do it anymore, right? And then, because you now have this understanding that there are these parts of you can harness it, right? You can harness it. You can allow yourself to have those thoughts and acknowledge them and accept them and do something about it. That's, I can talk more about it. I can go in more details, but that's one of the fundamental things that we should be doing. If you want, I can help you understand a bit more about how to develop a structure to use that hour of the day that you are taking out for yourself in a better way. But I would like to hear your thoughts about these things, and I would probably want to have time left for questions, because I'm sure people will be having lots of questions as well.
I wanted to ask you something. This meditation, whenever I try to, just do nothing, this concept is very mysterious to me. I wish I could bring my mind to a peace. But whenever I think of taking the time out, it's like everything just occupies my mind. Can't even sit for myself on my own. It's so hard. I mean,
Yes.
You were just talking about there are some processes. So one would be good. How to meditate? Okay. How?
So you are trying to, that Shivaji's story where he was chased by the Mughal army and went to an old woman's hut, where this old woman served her rice and dal. She didn't know that he was Shivaji. Okay. So what they do in the villages is it's a leaf on which you serve food. So you serve rice and you make a hole in the middle of the rice, and you put dal in that thing, right? So what Shivaji did was he sort of put his hand right in the middle and got burnt. And that old woman told him that you don't behave like Shivaji. Don't attack it's hot in the middle. You start from the corners. So that's how Shivaji developed his guerrilla warfare techniques in that time. So the legend goes.
Oh, I didn't know about that. I heard about his escape.
So what you are doing, so what you are doing, Ayesha, is you are trying to put your hand right in the middle of that hot food, right? So you have to develop it slowly. You have to acquire that skill. And if you learn things like Tai Chi or yoga, then what happens is, or indeed if you do any sort of exercise, just go for a walk. And whilst you are doing that activity, you need to pay attention to the sensations in the body and the movements that you are doing and the flow of the body through those movements. That allows your mind to have an anchor in something that is constantly changing. So it allows you to step away from your thoughts, right? Because you will not be, that constant churning won't be going on.
Yes.
But at the same time, you are focused on something that's not adding to that churning. Yeah, that's giving you a break from everything. And then from there, you can move on to more mindfulness techniques like body scanning. You can look it up on
Yeah.
many sites.
Yeah. Body scanning was a part of one of the part of living with long-term cancer effects. They did a mental course I did with NHS,
Yes.
and it,
So,
very little thing affects me, but it was amazing.
yes.
The body scanning
So,
technique.
so you can go to I very much like a website that's set up by the University of San Diego. They have got a Center for Mindfulness. You can just Google it. The University of San Diego Center for Mindfulness, and they've got a resource page with audios and videos, and it's amazing. And I would recommend everyone to try listening to their audios on body scanning, and start with the longer durations. You have to train yourself, and as you get better and better at it, you can do the shorter durations, but start with the longer ones first. And if you want to go all out Indian, then the Bihar School of Yoga has got audios that you can refer to. They call it Yoga Nidra or Shavasana.
Yoga Nidra.
So, or indeed, there would be many. All the popular sort of yoga schools would be having some sort of audio exercise along those lines. So that's the next thing. And once you've started doing that, then you move on to starting to sit with the rhythms of your body, like your breathing, or doing some chanting. It doesn't matter what you chant. Any sentence that inspires you, just keep saying it again and again, first loud enough for you to hear, and then just in your mind. So that is watching the rhythms, and that gives your mind an anchor. So your mind will run away in the thoughts, and then you bring it back to that anchor that you have chosen. And then the next stage then is what you were doing, which was to just sit and watch your thoughts and do nothing. But because you have trained yourself, you will be in a better position to deal with what comes up. And it's always going to be a challenging exercise, because the flow of thoughts that we have, it serves a purpose. And its purpose is to stop us from feeling the deep anxieties that we have to live with. And it's very interesting. This thing has been described in all cultures, in our ancient sort of traditions. So Gita, for example, refers to it as great fear, mahto bhayat. And the prescription it gives is that you have to follow the dharma of the self, yeah? Swadharma, which means essentially what we are talking about, right? Self-awareness, self-knowledge. So that is the path to being able to face the great fear that comes up when we sit with our thoughts. Sorry, I've been talking for too long.
No, it's very interesting. All these things which you said, very, very, it helps. So
I think we are the last 15 minutes, Ayesha. So I was wondering if we can maybe take some questions. I'm sure people will be very interested to hear more about Sonal's fascinating, enchanting story. And you've got such a nice way of talking and describing things.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you to Rashmi for bringing me into this amazing circle of people within IIW. I was just going to say, one of the things that I found that helped me in the meditation space, so I'm not a yogi kind of person, and I was always struggling to meditate. So what helped me was I would literally just get the eye mask, a cold one. So I'd put it in the freezer for a bit, and I'd have a cold eye mask. And then I'd be doing my breathing exercises whilst lying down on the sofa. You won't get me on the floor, that's for sure. And then the app called Calm, CALM. And on the app called Calm, you've got a variety of, whether it's the air, the water, the leaves, even Disney instrumental songs, but whatever works for you. But it would just help me to just allow my body to slow down from the rush. It was just allowing my body to slow down. And the more I was doing it, the more I was finding that, especially with the eyes, because I was finding if I just did that with my eyes with nothing on it, I was eager to see what was going on around me. Whereas if I put this cold eye mask on my eyes, it was just helping. It was really good for your eyes anyway, but it was just helping me to sort of just start to feel the cold, start to slowly slow down. And then music is one of my huge passions. So for me, it was music that was just helping me to center myself, where it didn't matter what was going on around me. I was actually allowing myself to be with me. And when you talk about self-awareness and that's where I had never heard of self-care before. I had never heard of self-care. And when one of the physiotherapists said to me, you need to be really kind of in the self-care space, I looked at her a bit like, what are you talking about? What is this self-care? I was trying to translate it into Gujarati and it just wasn't happening, to see if I'd been taught it when I was a young child. But it really just wasn't happening. But if anyone, if you can even start getting your children into that space of self-awareness, self-care, focusing on themselves inwardly, the confidence it gives you as an individual to be able to manage situations, to be able to say no, to and step back and just go, actually, do I need to do this right now? No, I'm not going to do it right now. Step back and go and do what my body needs at that time. It's a really weird way of living life, because we're not taught to live life like this, Ayesha. We're just not. We're not taught to live in this self-care life, right? So it's hard. It can be stressful at times and frustrating, because I need to, no, let's stop. And you're having your own little conversation with yourself, sometimes out loud and sometimes in your head.
In the mind, yes.
Yeah, somebody might think you're going a bit crazy, but it just helps you to kind of be more in tune with yourself. And I think that's so important when you're healing. Now, I've been told, and as with many other sufferers, this is potentially long COVID, long. It's not, it's going to be 3 months, it's going to be 6 months, it's going to be 9. They don't know the answer to this. So you have to think in a way of, okay, it's long, it's going to be for, however long it is, but I'm going to manage this. I'm going to manage this so that I can still be happy in life. I can still be content, still be able to do the things I want to do, but more at a pace that works for me.
Yes. Dr. Ajay, there is a question, there's a message for the link for University of Santiago, which you have done right now. Great. So,
There's also a book I would suggest. It's called I'm Okay, You Are Okay, which explains this model in a bit more detail. It's an old book. The examples there are dated, American dated examples, but don't dwell too much on the examples. Make your own examples from your own life.
Yeah.
And think more about just understanding the model in its in more depth.
There is a question
I think
from.
There's a question. I was going to say there's another question for you, Ajay. You might want to have a look at that. It's an interesting one.
Yes,
yes.
I actually wanted to talk to you about that, Dr. Ajay. So we tell all our patients that, take time, space out yourself and take things slowly. But we as doctors, after one patient goes, we immediately, in the same bed, there's another one. And it's a continuous strike which keeps on coming. And especially with COVID, we have not got a time out. It's almost been a year. And with COVID, even with our curriculum that we have, okay, we are done with this, we have to go for the next course, we have to go for the next step. It's very difficult to actually space our mind out. Even though we try to sit silently and space our mind out, and be like, okay, you still have this thing left to do. And it is kind of difficult when you see a particular disease, like, if you keep on seeing a variety of cases, it's fine. But when you keep on seeing the same cases coming again and again, you kind of start off having a fatigue, like not only like mental and physical fatigue, but in a way that, oh, it's the same case again, another COVID case. The enthusiasm in which you can go and see a patient, that decreases eventually. So I would want you to put some light in, like, how we maintain our enthusiasm in seeing the same case again and again, because we have to maintain our enthusiasm for the patient's well-being. Only if the doctor is energetic, we transfer that energy to the patients and the patients get better. But if we don't do that, then even we lose, and even the patient, it's a loss for the patient as well.
That's an interesting dilemma, Dr. Kaushika. You are referring to something which is quite similar to what Sonal is talking about, isn't it? Where you are facing an impossible challenge and you feel you just have to keep forcing yourself going through it. And you are feeling guilty that you are not feeling equally passionate about every patient that you are coming across.
Yes.
Yeah. And you are feeling guilty because there's a voice inside you that's telling you that you must feel passionate and enthusiastic and totally full of energy with every patient you see. We can't do that. We are in unprecedented times, and like so many other frontline workers or people who have had to step up to the plate and do things out of ordinary, like Ayesha helping out, or so many. I mean, almost everyone would have done something or the other that was out of ordinary and help people out. You have to allow for those feelings. There is the acceptance of it, the permission to not feel enthusiastic all the time will actually liberate you from the guilt, and that will free up more energy inside you, because a lot of your energy is just tied up in this feeling guilty about yourself. Will it make the problem that you refer to go away? Probably not, because what you are referring to is the reality of a doctor's life at this time. And the GMC survey, the General Medical Council survey recently referred to half of the doctors feeling burnt out, half of the trainers feeling burnt out. And I'm sure for trainees, it is even worse, but I haven't looked at that survey, that report. So that's the reality. It shall pass. We will go back to normalcy slowly over the next 3 to 5 years. But at this time, you are okay to not feel so enthusiastic about everything. And that's the permission you have to give yourself. Nobody else can give you that acknowledgement that things are difficult. And I'm going to do the best I can, and it's going to be okay.
So it's okay not to feel okay, basically.
Yes. It's so easy to say. It's almost a cliche, but to actually do it inside is not easy.
Yeah, because Dr. Kaushika, just as an introduction, has been very, very active day and night with the COVID patients. Was it in which hospital were you at?
It was in Leelavati Hospital, Mumbai.
I can only imagine how difficult it must have been.
Yes, saw it on television, how one after another.
But do find some time. And one of the things I always recommend is to find some space for creativity, because that harnesses a part of our brain that is otherwise not accessed by any other activity, right? And that creativity could be anything. Write a little poem, write a little prose of your experience, make a sketch of some flowers. Do something where you are producing a creative product, and it doesn't have to be shown to others. You can file it away, throw it away, it doesn't matter. But that process, you will find, gives you a sense of reward that's amazing. And you referred to music, Sonal. I don't know whether you are aware or not, but in the Indian tradition, the best form of prayer is considered to be meditation. The second best form of prayer is music. The third best form of prayer is dance. And the actual prayer comes after that. So yes, music is, if you have to almost let go of the words and just dwell on the rhythm and the flow of sound. And that takes you in the same space that meditation does, in that space where you are silent within yourself. because this sound is occupying your thought. So I listen to music in other languages just to get or just instrumental, or Indian classical, which is beautiful in that, in that sense, you can listen to so many instrumental stuff, or even the major sort of khayals of that sort of classical where the words are not relevant. It's the music that is. So that's something else that I would strongly advise people to try in that hour that they are, or half an hour, or whatever time they can take out for themselves to use that as an anchor. And the other thing is we don't find time to do exercise. And there's a couple of very interesting papers that came out recently. You can look it up, I'm sure, on one of those websites, which looked at the effect of exercise on our concentration and our reported mood and our sort of analyzed psychological metrical tests. And what they found was 3 to 4 days of 45 minutes of exercise improved our performance across the whole range of metrics that they were looking at, including our sense of well-being, our reported mood, our observed mood, our ability to solve problems and concentrate, and everything else, our sleep. So very important, 45 minutes, at least 3 to 4 times a week of vigorous exercise. It doesn't have to be lifting weights in gym. It can be a brisk walk, but it has to be a brisk walk, right? Not a saunter in the park. It has to be, you have to do an activity if you can. I'm sorry. This is something that you will probably not be able to do at this stage, or someone with chronic fatigue would not be able to. But for everyone else, do include that in your routine, and you will find it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to work. So it doesn't work right away. After 3 to 4 weeks of doing it, it actually transforms some of these things, and you will notice it yourself.
I was just going to add to that, because even though I can't do the brisk walking and stuff, there's still nothing wrong with, sitting in a chair and doing some exercises to music. Or I have 2 big dogs, and even just throwing them the ball while they're in the garden and they're running around, and we have a little play in the house. Those kind of things are still making my body move. So it's gentle exercises as opposed to anything vigorous, because I'm probably going to get the medical word wrong, but is it the endorphins that start to happen as you start to sorry?
The happy enzymes, they say.
The happy enzymes, yeah, there you go, that start to happen when you do that, is actually really good for you as well, in terms of your body healing, because the blood is circulating, hopefully to the right places, and that's something that helps. The other thing I just wanted to pick up on what Ajay was saying is in the creativity space. So I mentioned earlier about writing. Now, I was fortunate that during the whole period that we've had, that I got to take part in 2 collaboration books where I got to write a chapter in each one. But more than the books being published and all of that, the joy I found sitting down, writing about these, I chose 2 topics. One was about when I was in the public sector, and a brown woman in a white man's world. And actually, by writing that chapter, I wanted to go and shake the hand of the manager that was really horrible to me, that forced me to leave and then have the life that I was having, where I was passionately doing what I love. But it was subconsciously hidden. I hadn't had a time in my life to think about it again in the way that I could when I was writing about it. I was fortunate that that's been published, but I'd also done other bits of writing that will never get published because I don't want them to. But I know one day I'm either going to have a bonfire or I'm going to shred them, and I'm going to have a smile on my face as I do it. It was just amazing to get this stuff out of me, that was just making me heavy, making me even more uncomfortable than I was already with all the kind of the medical things that were going on. So there are things out there that you can do that, it it's not having to be a whole day going to a museum or something, but it can be creative.
Like
in yourself.
burning your ex's pictures helps a lot. Yeah, burning everything like that. But I would just like to wound up the session and thank Rashmi again for bringing us all together. And thank you so much, Dr. Ajay, for your time today. We've learned a lot. Hopefully we'll have some questions. When we have them, I'll send it to you. And thank you, Sonal. And we look forward to connecting again and talking again. Okay, thank you, Rashmi ji. And
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Goodbye. Namaste.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would like to thank Dr. AJAI KUMAR Pandey and Sonal Dave and Ayesha for bringing such insightful session all together. It is inspiring Indian women trying to make a difference, and keep an eye on the timeline of the page. So because we are having a lot of sessions. Yes, of course, London is opening, but then we keep on sending waves of positivism through inspiring Indian women. Thank you very much again. And see you all again. And Sonal, that was an amazing, inspiring story.
Yes.
Very well done. Very well done. We look forward to watching you as a Toastmaster once again on the stage. Yeah. Hope to meet you all soon, very soon. Goodbye.